Hello, everyone. My name is Amit, and we will be discussing about AWS Compute today. As you already know, as part of the agenda, we are going to talk about AWS Compute, what it is, what are the offerings in Compute, and we'll see some examples and some insights, right? So it's an introductory session, so please don't expect any detailed discussion on a very specific topic. It's just an introductory session on AWS Compute in general. That's because we are running a series of webinars and we run all kinds of discussions. So in future we can have more in-depth discussion, but for now we are going to have just an introductory discussion. So talking about AWS. AWS stands for Amazon Web Services. It is provided by Amazon, and it is one of the first public cloud services being offered, right, since like maybe 1.5 decades. So Amazon started offering public cloud services some time back, and now they are one of the leaders in the public cloud domain, right? So they also have competitors, like they have Google Cloud, they have Azure, and then AWS themselves. And then they have Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, known as OCI. Then they have smaller cloud players like Alibaba Cloud, then DigitalOcean, and things like that, right? AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform are the major players in this sequence. AWS is still leading the market. Azure is catching up. Azure is from Microsoft, by the way. And Google Cloud comes in close third, right? So AWS offers you a lot of public cloud services, right? If you talk about what kind of services are offered by public cloud, then maybe this diagram would make some sense. Let's maybe open this one. I'm just going to shamelessly use somebody else's diagram or graphics. I want to have a, this one. All right, here. So if you have your own infrastructure, like your own data center, or your own, servers and things like that, this is what you do, right? This is on the left hand side, right? You manage your own networking, like physical networking, and then virtual networking. You manage your own storage, you manage your own servers. If you are doing virtualization, then you manage your own virtualization. You install your own operating system. You install your own middleware, runtime, right? And then finally, you set up your own application and manage applications data as well. Yeah. So this is what you do when you or your organization owns the complete data center. But if you use public cloud, you can choose to go any of these three ways, which is infrastructure as service, platform as service, or software as service. Infrastructure as service provides you ready to use infrastructure without worrying about lower level implementations, right? So when I say infrastructure as a service, you want to have at most, an interface to an operating system, right? You want to have a virtual machine with an operating system and virtual machine with a specific configuration. So if you get access to an operating system via SSH or Telnet or any remote protocol, then it's good enough, right? If you get to use a computer and its operating system without worrying about networking, without worrying about its physical storage, without worrying about the physical servers and the virtualization technology. If you don't have to worry about all this and you just say, hey, I want a virtual machine with an operating system, and you get it, That's when you have infrastructure as service, right? So you get an operating system, but it's your responsibility to manage operating system, to install any middlewares on the operating system. For example, let's say Docker, to install any runtime, for example, let's say Java, and then run any applications on that and manage the application's data, right? That's called infrastructure as a service. If you want to have a reduced amount of management, yeah, further, then you can just say, hey, I just want to install my application and manage its data. Why do I have to worry about operating system and the middleware and things like that? Why can't the cloud provider provide it to me? So that can be done as well. So that's called platform as a service. For example, Kubernetes, manage Kubernetes service, manage database services. Then you just manage your application and your data. The entire platform on which the application runs is managed by the cloud provider, right? And then there is software as a service where you just use the software like Gmail or Google Drive. You don't have to worry about what is happening behind that. So these are various cloud services. We are going to talk about one of the infrastructure as service, which is known as AWS Compute, right? So we are going to talk about that. Just give me 1 second, guys. Just give me a minute, please. Just give me maybe 2 minutes, yeah? I have something urgent to attend to. I'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, sorry about that. I had something to attend to. Again, sorry about the interruption. Okay, so this is what we have from cloud platforms, and we are going to talk about AWS Compute, which is infrastructure as service provided by AWS, right? So this is your AWS homepage, and you can go to products and see all the products being offered, right? For example, all these services which are in the feature services are their most used services. And you can see it has Amazon EC2, which stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. So ECC, and instead of calling that ECC, they call it an EC2. There are two C's, right? So Elastic Compute Cloud, that enables you to get virtual machines on demand. And this is what we are going to focus on. There are other services. For example, there is Amazon S3 storage service, right? So you directly get a interface to simple file storage, right? There is a service for managed database. Then there are virtual private cloud and things like that, right? There are many infrastructure services, many platform services, many services, software services. We are going to talk about Amazon EC2, right? If I go to Amazon EC2, you can see the complete overview, right? And let's take a look at it after logging in. So you can create a free account and log in. You get some free usage as well, right? So 12 months of 750 hours per month of AWS virtual machines. But now I'm not going to go with the free tier and what it is. You can read about it by yourself. When we log in to AWS account, you get this, right? So this is called AWS Web Console. This is the AWS console here. And you can see some popular services listed here already. If you click on the services, you will see all AWS services. For example, in the recently visited, I have visited all these services recently. So I can click on EC2, and that takes me to the home page of Elastic Compute Cloud, right? And this is the default dashboard of EC2. On the left-hand side, you can see various components of EC2, right? So for example, you can see instances, you can see images, elastic block storage, networking, load balancing, and auto scaling. So these are the various configurations and offerings with a combination of which you can actually deploy your multiple servers with all the security and connectivity in mind. Right? So we are going to just take a look at these today. So let's start with instances, right? We are going to talk about each of these things, some of them in detail, some of them we are going to just touch upon. But let's start with instances, right? So what are instances? Instances are nothing but virtual machines. Right now, you can see there are no instances here. But if you create an instance, you essentially get a virtual machine and you get a way to log into the virtual machine or to the operating system of the virtual machine. You can't see the virtual machine. You can't know, on which physical server the virtual machine runs. It's all virtualized for us. But what we essentially get is a virtual machine, right? That virtual machine would run in some region, in some data center, in some availability zone, in some rack, on some high performance blade servers. Somewhere it will be running, but that's all virtualized for us. We don't care and we don't need to know about where the machine is running, right? So here you have all the instances. Now, before you create an instance, you should understand what do you need to create an instance, right? So when you create an instance, you should know what operating system you want on the instance. You should know how much storage you want, right? You should know what kind of networking you want. You should know what kind of connectivity you want on that virtual machine. And then maybe some things more like auto scaling and all, right? So before getting into instance creations, let's talk about instance types, right? So if you go to instance types, AWS provides you some pre-configured instance types, which are nothing but configuration about how much CPU, how much RAM, and how much, what kind of disk you get on that particular instance. So if you create an AWS EC2 instance of type, let's say T2 micro, then you get one CPU, yeah, you get 1 GB of RAM, you get low to moderate network performance. That means you are not going to get a gigabit performance, and there is some pricing involved with it. So if you deploy a Linux-based operating system on that VM, you will get like 0.0116 USD per hour. If you install Windows, then it's a bit higher because Windows gets its own license. So you get a licensed Windows, but you have to pay for the hardware and for the license, right? So this is very cheap, right? If you just want a machine to maybe compile your code, or to maybe just maybe, run a small Docker container. This machine is enough. So there are a couple of people requesting for zoom in. My screen is already quite big. It's running on full HD, 1080p resolution. I can zoom in a bit, but it may reduce the experience. Let me try it. If you are on your mobile device, that's probably the reason you can't see things clearly. Let me try to zoom in, but as you can see, it reduced the experience. But let's see how it goes. Okay, so you can see T2 micro, and if I bring this up, maybe it has these configurations, right? If you go to much bigger configurations, much stronger or much more powerful configurations, like if I go to 15th page here, you get let's see what's the most that we get here. For example, this is X2 IEDN metal, right? You get 128 CPU cores, 4 TB of RAM, 3.8 TB of disk, SSD, 100 gigabit internet speed, and the cost is also, proportionally high, which is like 26 USD per hour or 32 USD per hour for Windows. This is still cheap if you think about setting up a similar machine for yourself. If you would have to set up a server with 128 CPUs and then this much RAM and this much storage, think about how much power you are going to need, how much space you are going to need, how much networking, warranty, hardware cost, everything you are going to need. This is much cheaper than that. And if you just need it for like 10 hours, great, $260 is nothing for using such a machine for 10 hours, right? So anyways, these are called instance types, which provide you the configuration, right? We know that. There are other things which we can talk about later, but yeah, this is what we want to know. Then we talk about operating system that you want to install on your EC2 instance. So in AWS, the operating systems are called as AMIs. AMI stands for Amazon Machine Interface. No, Amazon Machine Image, sorry. And it is nothing but a customized version of an operating system, which is customized to work on AWS, right? For example, there could be an Ubuntu operating system. So AWS will take the generally available Ubuntu operating system and then customize it by adding, custom kernel, then maybe custom security implementations, custom binaries to ensure that it works on the AWS platform, right? So AWS calls such modified operating systems as Amazon Machine Images. Okay, you can create your own AMIs. That's what this page is about, the default page to show you the AMIs that I have created. Generally, in mature organizations, you create your own AMIs and use them. AWS also provides you ready-to-use AMIs, right, which you can just deploy and use for your own exploration or study purposes. Even organizations can use them, but generally organizations tend to create their own images, but they provide ready-to-use AMIs. So you can see here, there is an AMI called Amazon Linux 2023 AMI, right? So Amazon Linux is, I'm not sure if it is Red Hat based or Debian based. I'm really not sure. So this AMI is created by AWS, by Amazon, specifically for AWS. Then you have, Mac OS. There's an AMI for Mac. And then there is a AMI for Red Hat, RHEL 9. There is AMI for SUSE. There are AMIs for Ubuntu Server 2204, then Ubuntu Server 2004. Then you have Windows Server 22, So things like that. Yeah. So you have ready to use AMIs as well, right? There are some AMIs which could be created by you. Right now, we don't have any AMIs here, right? I don't know why it shows 4, but there are AMIs created by third party as well. So I can build an AMI or you can build an AMI and put it up in AWS Marketplace for some specific use cases. And you will, of course, charge them, right? So there is an AMI by Palo Alto, which is for firewalls. So you can deploy them to create your own firewall solutions, or Sophos for high availability and whatever. Yeah. So there are a lot of AMIs, custom AMIs also available. Anyways, so AMIs is the operating system that you want to use in your AWS instance. You can create your own, or you can use pre-provided AMIs by AWS, right? Then comes the disk that you want to attach in your virtual machine, in your instance. So you can only attach elastic block storage. Okay, this is a special kind of solution provided by AWS, which is used to store your operating system data, right? This is a storage that attaches to your virtual machines. It's not a file storage, right? NFS or something like that. It's a block storage, which can be used to store any kind of data, right? So you can create volumes like, partitions, and then use them in your instance. And then your instance will use those partitions for your operating system and the default storage. You can create more volumes, like more than one volumes, and then attach them to your VMs and mount them at different mount points. So you can have as much storage as you want, right? Then comes network and security. So when you create a virtual machine, you want to have a couple of things for the virtual machine, right? First thing is, in AWS, when you create a virtual machine, you can only connect to it via SSH. And if you are using the default AWS provided AMIs, then you can connect to them via SSH and only with a public private key pair. You cannot connect via using passwords, right? So you can go to key pairs and upload your public key here, or create a key pair here and associate them with your AWS instance, right? Then you want to have an IP address for your AWS instance. So either you can reserve public IP address so that you can access it from anywhere in the world. So those are called elastic IPs, which are static IPs for your machines. Or you can not use elastic IPs and just go with the dynamically created, dynamically allocated IP addresses for your AWS instance, right? You also want to create an external firewall for your AWS instances. So AWS by default provides you a firewall, and firewalls are known as security groups, right? These are not operating system firewalls. These are firewalls at the physical network level. Okay, these are called security groups, and you can see there is already a default security group provided to you when you create an AWS account. You can create more security groups, but this is the default one. And if you check the security group, each security group has a couple of rules, like incoming rule and outgoing rule. So if you see inbound rules, that is what kind of communication is allowed to enter the virtual machine to which this security group will be associated with. And if you scroll down, you will see that this rule allows all traffic and all type of protocols on all port ranges, but only sources which match this. So only from these machines, these kind of machines, it allows all communication to the VMs which has this security group. Similarly, for outbound rules, that means what kind of communication can go out from the virtual machine. You see that all traffic is allowed to go out on all protocols, all port range, but anywhere in the world. So the destination is unrestricted. You can connect to any machine for outgoing communication from the instance, but you cannot have incoming communication from all the machines. You can just have incoming communication from these machines, right? If you associate this security group with your AWS instance. So this provides you secure communication. You can filter out what kind of communication you want to allow. You may say that I just want SSH communication from anywhere in the world, or only HTTP communication from anywhere in the world, right? Right. So this is done. And there's also one more. Let me zoom out. There's also load balancing and auto scaling, which we will talk about later if time permits. I'm not going to cover them in detail. Right. So let's create an AWS instance. We have understood all the components. So let's create an instance. I go to instances, and then I can create on launch instances. Right. Let's create on launch instances. And when you launch an instance, you can give or more tags. Right. So tags are nothing but labels that you can apply on an instance. Tag is name. You can give more tags. So I say the name is, let's say, SkillUpRight. Can you guys see my screen? All right, cool. Thank you. So I give it some name, right? Launch an instance. It's an instance creation wizard. It asks me what tags you want to apply to an instance. Then it asks me which OS image you want to use, right? So I told you there are these AMIs, Amazon Linux, Mac OS, Ubuntu, and things like that. So you can choose any of these AMIs. I will just choose what I am most comfortable with, which is the Ubuntu one. I choose this. And then you can choose, right? So if you scroll down, then you can choose your instance type. Hey, hold on a second. Yeah, so instance type. You can choose here. Now you can choose any of the instance types that we discussed, if you remember, right? T2 micro, T3 micro, which will give you like one CPU and 1 GB of RAM. Or you can go to like C6G, 16X large, which is 64 CPU, 128 GB. So you can use any of these AMIs. I'm just going to use the default one, which is T2 micro, which gives me 1 CPU and 1 GB of memory. And it will charge me this much amount, right? So you get an overview here. Then this is the key pair, because on AWS, when you create an instance, you are expected to connect to it via SSH, and that also passwordless SSH. So you have to create a key pair. So either you use a key pair which you have already created. You can go ahead and proceed without a key pair, but then you can never connect to the machine. So it doesn't make any sense. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new key pair from here itself, right? I can also go to this security and go to key pairs and create a key pair here. But this wizard also allows me to create a new key pair directly from the wizard page as well. So I'm just going to do that. It asks me for key pair name. So I'll just give it the name. There's a name that I want to give. This is SkillUpRight, and this is the date today, so that I know what's the purpose of this key pair. And I'm going to use RSA protocol and PEM format. And then I'm going to create key pair, right? So this key pair will be created once. So if I click on create key pair, you see the key pair is created here. So the public key is here, and the corresponding private key is downloaded on my system. You need to keep this safe. If you lose this private key, you cannot download it again. So just keep it safe and use it for connection, right? And the public key is here. If you want to know details about public and private SSH keys and passwordless SSH, you can go to YouTube It's pretty simple to understand. It might be a 10-minute video at most to make you understand what am I talking about. But if you already know them, great. So I've created a key pair and I've told that, okay, use that key pair here, right? Then comes the network settings. So there is, security group. So by default, it says create a new security group, or you can select existing security group. So there is a security group which already exists, which is the default one, right? If you remember, or you can create a new security group, and I will do that. And I will also, edit this security group's configuration. So I will click on this edit button, and here I'll create a new security group, but I'm going to say that I want all kinds of traffic, right? Source type is anywhere, from anywhere, on all protocols and all ranges, right? So incoming rules I want to create like that. This is going to be very unsecure because I'm allowing any kind of communication. But for our demonstration purpose, this is fine, and this is going to make our life easy, not dealing with network restrictions. But in production and in general enterprise environment, this is a very bad practice. Okay, so I say add security group rule. Sorry, I have already added, right? So this one I'm going to remove. So now I have edited my security group. I'm creating a new security group with a incoming rule like this. And I'm going to use that in my associate that automatically it will be associated with my instance. And then finally, I can specify what kind of, how much storage I want to attach to my disk or to my virtual machine. The default is 8 GB of general purpose storage, general purpose SSD. I can also have, a very advanced and, fast storage associated with it, or have a very slow storage like magnetic drive associated with it. This all leads to cost. So either you can save your cost by going down, or you can increase your cost by going to high performance, or you can just stay with general purpose for normal performance, right? So this is my storage, and I'm not going to go to advanced, but you can do a lot of other things in advanced. And finally, it asks me, all right, here are all the configurations for your AWS instance. How many such instances you want to create, right? So if you want to create instances in bulk, you can say, I want to create 10 such instances, right? But for now, I'll just say one, because why to create more? And here you see the summary before creation. So this is the AMI, Ubuntu, this is the instance type, there's a new security group I'm creating, and 8 GB of storage. And then I click on launch instance. I'll give it a few seconds. And you see the instance is launched. If I go to my instances homepage, you will see there is an instance called SUR created, right? This is the instance ID. So each instance get a unique ID. And then you can see more details like what is the instance type, where it is created, what is the IP address, the public IP address, public DNS name, and other things about this instance. It is now running also. So the instance is powered up and running, right? And when you choose an instance, there could be multiple instances. When you select an instance, below you can see more details about the instance, right? So for example, you can see the security, like security group and all that. You can see the networking part, the IP address details, the storage part. You can see the monitoring as well. So as and when the time progresses, you can see how much CPU utilization, how much memory utilization, network utilization has been happening on this instance, right? So you can see all these details. All right, so my virtual machine is up, and now I can click on this connect button to connect to this machine. I click on connect, and it gives me multiple options to connect, right? So you can use EC2 Instance Connect, where you can just connect it on the browser. So if I click on this connect button, it's going to hopefully connect to my EC2 instance. And there you go. You can see I get a terminal and I'm logged in as the Ubuntu user on this instance. And I can run any command. I can get connected to this instance. But this is a limitation. It is connected on the browser. So, a lot of limitations when compared to connecting with the normal terminal. So you cannot copy paste, and there are weird behaviors of the browser. So generally, we don't prefer connecting this way. So another method is to connect from your SSH client. So every modern Windows machine or Linux machine or Mac machine comes with a SSH client. If you just open the terminal of your Windows or any machine, right? You have SSH installed everywhere now, right? So let me zoom in a bit. So what you can do is, it tells you that you can run this command to connect to it. So SSH and then -I, choose the private key that you downloaded. So if you remember when we created key pair, the private key was downloaded. So choose the private key which you want to identify using, and then the username at the machine DNS name. So you can use this command and connect to it. Now this private key is downloaded in my downloads folder. So I'll just ED2 downloads folder here, right? And if I just copy this command and paste it here like this should work, because this PEM file or the private key is available in my downloads folder, and this command should work. It asks me for confirmation. I say yes. Maybe I should, make it a bit. Am I audible? All right, people can hear me, right? Okay, thank you. And now you see, I am connected from my Windows terminal as well. Okay, and now you are done. You have your machine with you. You can do whatever you want. You can install some packages, you can edit something and things like that. Okay, you with the default AWS AMIs, you also have the sudo permissions with the default Ubuntu user. So if you say sudo apt update, you can run privileged commands as well. And you can install any packages. Right? For example, let's say I need to install Java. I can say sudo apt install this Java package, and I press yes, and it's going to install Java for me, and I can do whatever I want to do if I have a Java code base. So that is what I wanted to show you. Yeah, you can create instances like this. You can go ahead and further explore, what are the various configurations possible for security groups, for AMIs and things like that. Once you are done with your instances, as you know, instances are charged. So you are paying for the compute power, which is the CPU and RAM, and you are also paying for the storage that is created. So you see here, this is the 8 GB storage that is being used by that machine. So this is also being charged. Okay. So yeah, if you are done with your instances, if you are not using them, I will always recommend to terminate them or destroy them. Yeah. So I can say actions and then instance or instance state, and I can say terminate instance. I can power off the instance. So when I'm not using them, but if I still want to preserve the data on the disk, I can simply power them off, like stop instance, and then I can start them again. Stopping and starting instance will save you on the compute charges. If you stop an instance, you don't have to pay for the CPU and the RAM because you are not using it. But its associated data, the EBS volume, will continue to live, so you will have to pay for that. If you don't want to preserve the data and don't want to use the machine, just go ahead and terminate it. Right? Terminating is going to delete the EBS volume as well. So I click on terminate, and this instance is going to be terminated and removed very soon. You will stop paying for this now. And you can see my terminal also will be like, okay, disconnected. Connection is closed, gone. Okay, now we can take questions for maybe 5-10 minutes. Please use the Q&A section for questions, not the chat, because in the chat, the questions just go away because there are so many messages. So use the Q&A window to ask your questions, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. So there are some questions on the chat. I'll just answer them, but further questions, please move on to Q&A. So there's a question, how can we connect our instances via PuTTY? So you can use PuTTY, and then in the PuTTY tool, you can provide the host name of the instance and the username and the private key that you want to use and connect to it. Right? It's just a different SSH client. We can't have any UI login. In the default AMI, there is no UI, but you can have an AMI which provides you UI, so you can use that. And then you can have UI based login as well. So yeah, for sure. This is like WSL. So this terminal is not WSL. It is a default PowerShell terminal. You can also open command prompt, right? The command prompt also has SSH available. Maybe I can show you, like you can open command prompt like this. Yeah. This is a command prompt, and you can say SSH. It works on the Windows 11 machines, at least it works. Can't be used Ubuntu GUI if not SSH by other means. As I mentioned, the default AMI does not have GUI. You can install GUI package. You can also use an AMI which has GUI, and that will allow you to log in with username and password. But then 8 GB of storage will not be sufficient. You will need a bigger disk for installation. Question from Gautam. What are spot instances? And Murali, please move your question to the Q&A. Yeah? I already see your question, but right. So what are spot instances and on-demand instances? What we saw was on-demand instance. A spot instance is a instance which you want to create and reserve for a long time. So if you do that, then you make a contract with AWS that, hey, I want to have a particular instance with these many resources for like 1 year, and they will give you cheaper price, but then you will have to pay for this entire time. Okay. Is there any session timeout for the PEM key? PEM key is not session based. It acts like instead of password, you use PEM key. There is no session associated with it. Okay. Then there's a question. Is it like when we choose an instance type, 1 CPU, 50 GB, then from that instance type, we can create many instances? No, an instance means you get a virtual machine on top of that. You do not get a system for further virtualization. You cannot do your own virtualization. You just get an operating system. How to convert .pem file to PuTTY compatible? I mean, this is Google search. This is Google search. Yeah, the first result will answer a question. On the terminating instances, is the VM lost? Yes, you have to create again. So if you don't want to lose the VM, just do a shutdown, right? Shut down an instance. Do not terminate. So you do stop instance and that's going to stop running if you don't want to lose the VM. I can see the status check menu on the OpenWS page. I don't know what you mean. Maybe if you mean this, then all right. I don't know if that is a question. Sometimes it's down. Oh yeah, so this will come up after some time. When you create an instance, it will monitor for some time and then it'll come after some time. Okay, this is answered. This is answered. Question Saurabh, in the connection URL in PowerShell, you use PEM file name, showing that PEM file is insecure. Is that an alternative? What do you mean showing PEM file is insecure? PEM file is with you. The name of the PEM file does not make it insecure. If you see the name of my PEM file, how will it impact me? Right? You should not see the content of the file. Okay, so looking at the file name is fine, no problem. How can we make it up automatically? The status check will come up automatically if that is a question. Can you please show Windows OS also? Just wanted to see how it looks like. Maybe next time when we do a session, I can show. Right now, there is not enough time to do that. In production, should user directly access instance by public IP, by HTTP, or some load balancer it be? There will be load balancer because you want to have high availability, right? In production, you need to create instances behind a load balancer so that even if some instance go down, there is a backup. Question, what is the meaning of free tier? So free tier is when you create an account, you can have some free services for 12 months, like some free VMs, some free storage and things like that. So that's the free tier. You can go to aws.amazon.com/free and you can see all about the free tier. What are the free offers, free trials, and 12 months free services and things like that. So you can explore here. One instance is created, is it possible to increase, decrease CPU RAM? Yes. So when instance is created, you can change the instance type. You cannot say this is how much CPU or RAM you want directly. You can just say change the instance type. So for that, you need to power down the instance. So stop the instance and then go to actions, instance settings, and then there is change instance type. Right now it is grayed out because our instance is down. You can change the instance type and choose whatever you want. Are all the Linux commands same for all AMIs? So there are the Linux commands may differ between Ubuntu and SUSE and Red Hat, but the common commands are same like ls and sudo and all are same. But for installation of package in Ubuntu, you might be using apt commands. In RHEL, you will use yum commands. In SUSE, I don't know which one you will be using. So don't know. Terminating instance will also terminate all associated EBS volumes. Yes, it will terminate all associated EBS volumes. What should be my next step if I want to learn AWS? So AWS has a lot of learning solutions also. Go to documentation or go to learn and go through all this documentation, right? So yeah, there are a lot of resources, free resources, paid resources. YouTube is full of them. You have some courses by SkillUpRight as well, some courses by other providers. So explore. AWS gives any alert if available storage is very less or full. You can create alerts, right? In AWS, notifications, alerts. So you can set up monitoring and then use that. Sometimes EC2 got hacked. What are the securities that we need to keep in mind? EC2s will get hacked if you open it to public, like I did just now. So if you just know IP addresses, then you have the communication to the EC2. And then if you are using password-based login, then you are gone. So always keep securities in mind. Define your own security groups, your own application gateways. So the common practice is give the least permissions required, right? Don't open the permissions unless it is required. So have as much tight security as possible. While changing the instance type to a lower size, whether the data will be lost. So data is on disk, right? So it doesn't matter if you have 5 GBs RAM and 2 CPUs, or if you have 1 CPU and 2 GB RAM. The data is on the disk. Your performance will be lost. In case to retain AWS volume post EC termination, what should be the steps taken? You cannot preserve the EBS volume post termination. You can, instead of terminating, you can do stop instance, and that is going to power down the instance, and you don't have to pay anything for the resources, compute resources, and disk will continue to exist. And when you power it up, you will get back your data, but you will have to pay for the data all the time. All right. Is it possible to increase storage or CPU once instance is created already? Yes, you can increase the CPU by changing the instance type, as I have already shown here, right? You cannot change the disk storage, but you can create a new volume and mount it on the VM and have more storage. Can we detach EBS alone? Not the primary EBS. You cannot detach it. You can take a snapshot, right? So if you go to this volume, you can take a snapshot and preserve the data and then delete the EC2 instance. Is it possible to increase storage of CPU? Yeah, I answered this already. Okay, so I don't have any more questions. Thank you for so many questions, and thank you for listening to me this past 1 hour. I hope the session was introductory and helpful for you guys. And I do take regular webinars with SkillUpRight, so hopefully I'm going to see you around in the next one, right? So please you will be posted on when we have next webinars for different technologies. And till we meet next, thank you, have fun, and have a good day. Bye.